Scout Commander Xyloth had seen many strange things in his 300 years of service to the Galactic Imperium. He had mapped unknown star systems, discovered new forms of life, and catalogued dozens of primitive species. But nothing prepared him for what appeared on his scanner that day. His ship drifted near the edge of the Orion Spur, a quiet region of space where nothing important ever happened. The Imperium had surveyed this area 3,000 years ago and found only one species worth noting. They were called humans, and back then, they were barely using metal tools. The report said they would need at least 10,000 more years before they could leave their planet. The scanner beeped. Xyloth looked at the screen and froze. An energy signature. Not natural, not imperial. Something new. He pressed a button and zoomed in. A ship appeared on his display. But what a strange ship it was. Xyloth had studied every known species and their vessels. All of them followed the same basic rules. Ships were symmetrical. Ships were efficient. Ships looked like tools built for a purpose. This ship looked wrong. One side was different from the other. It had marks and symbols painted on its hull. Parts of it seemed to serve no clear function. Xyloth ran the design through his computer, but the machine could not identify it. He opened a communication channel. His translator crackled for a moment, searching for the right language patterns. A voice answered. It spoke in a strange accent, but the words were clear. This is the UNSS Endeavour of the United Nations Space Service. We come in peace. Xyloth checked his records. United Nations. Humans. The primitive tool users from 3,000 years ago. Impossible. I am Scout Commander Xyloth of the Galactic Imperium. Your species was not expected to achieve space travel for many thousands of years. How did you build a faster-than-light drive? The human captain laughed. It was a warm sound, friendly. We worked hard. Took us a while, but we got there. Would you like to come aboard and talk? Xyloth was trained for first contact situations. The protocol was clear. Board the vessel. Inspect their technology. Determine if they posed any threat to the Imperium. I request permission to dock and conduct a standard inspection of your vessel. There was a pause. Then the human spoke again, and this time the voice sounded embarrassed. That might be a bit awkward. Our interior design choices are, well, they are very human. It might be culturally confusing. How about we meet at a neutral station instead? Xyloth felt a spike of concern. What were they hiding? Every species in the Imperium welcomed inspections. Their ships were identical inside and out. Clean, efficient, perfect. He took detailed scans of the vessel and sent them back to Imperial headquarters. Then he agreed to meet the humans at a nearby trade station. 3 days later, Xyloth stood in a conference room with 5 other Imperial commanders. They all stared at the holographic image of the human ship rotating slowly in the air. This makes no sense. Admiral Creton was the oldest officer in the room. He had fought in 17 wars and designed 6 classes of warships. Look at the hull. It is not symmetrical. The weight distribution is all wrong. And what are these markings? Decorations, Xyloth said. Art, they called it. The humans painted their ship. The room fell silent. No one painted their ships. Ships were tools. You did not decorate a tool. Master Engineer Vorath stepped closer to the hologram. He pointed at a section near the back of the ship. This area here. The scans show it is filled with plants. Living plants. Inside a starship. Another commander, a Krellian named Sharks, made a dismissive gesture. They must be carrying supplies. Food stores. Vorath shook his head. No. The plants are growing. They have a garden. On a diplomatic vessel. And here, Xyloth pointed to another section. This appears to be a recreational facility. The humans confirmed it is a place where the crew exercises and plays games. Games? Admiral Creton looked disturbed. On a ship designed for deep space exploration? Yes, sir. They also have something called a mess hall. It is larger than our entire crew quarters section. They use it for eating meals together and socializing. The commanders looked at each other. Imperial ships had feeding stations. Small, efficient spaces where crew members consumed their nutrient packs quickly before returning to work. The idea of a large room just for eating together seemed wasteful. Vorath ran calculations on his data pad. According to my analysis, the human ship is 34% less efficient than our optimal design. They are wasting massive amounts of space on crew comfort. Admiral Creton nodded slowly. Then they are not a military threat. Any species that designs ships this poorly cannot compete with Imperial engineering. We will welcome them to the Imperium as a minor member species. They can learn proper ship design from us. But Xyloth was not so sure. He had met the human captain. The woman had been confident, relaxed, and sharp. Her crew seemed happy. Every Imperial crew he knew was stressed, efficient, and tired. Something about this did not add up. Sir, perhaps we should learn more about why they design ships this way before we dismiss them. Admiral Creton waved his hand. There is nothing to learn. Efficiency is efficiency. We have perfected starship design over 50,000 years. These humans are simply too primitive to understand proper engineering. Dismissed. The commanders filed out of the room. But Xyloth stayed behind, staring at the hologram of the strange human ship. Something told him the Imperium was making a mistake. Something told him these humans understood something important that the Imperium had forgotten. He just did not know what it was yet. 6 months passed. The Galactic Imperium invited humanity to send more ships for cultural exchange. 12 human vessels arrived in Imperial space. Admiral Creton decided to inspect them personally. What he saw shocked him more than the first human ship. Each ship was completely different. One looked like an Earth creature called a shark. Another had huge windows along its entire length. A third was painted in bright colors with words in human languages covering the hull. The largest ship, a military vessel called the UNSS Indomitable, had an image of a human female on its nose and the words Death's Mistress painted in red. Admiral Creton called an emergency meeting of his war council. Every military expert in the Imperium crowded into the Great Hall. The holographic displays showed all 12 human ships rotating slowly. This is unprecedented. The Admiral's voice was tight with concern. In 50,000 years, we have never encountered a spacefaring species with such chaotic design philosophy. Master Engineer Vorath stood at his station, reviewing data. My team has analyzed every human vessel. No two are identical. They use different hull configurations, different weapon placements, different interior layouts. It is as if each ship was designed by a completely different species. A young officer named Telrix raised her hand. Sir, I studied the old records. Every known civilization follows the same development path. First, they build many different ship designs. Then, through trial and error, they discover the optimal design. After that, all their ships look the same because that design is the most efficient. Exactly. Vorath nodded. We in the Imperium discovered perfect symmetry 200,000 years ago. The Krellian Empire found it 100,000 years ago. The Ventari discovered it 50,000 years ago. Every species reaches the same conclusion because physics does not change. So why have the humans not reached this conclusion? Admiral Creton asked. Vorath pulled up a detailed scan. Because they prioritize the wrong things. Look at this. The UNSS Indomitable has a room full of exercise equipment. It has a library with physical books. It has a cafeteria that can seat 200 crew members at once. It even has something they call an observation lounge with comfortable chairs facing large windows. The council members murmured among themselves. Imperial ships had none of these things. Crew members exercised in their personal quarters using standard equipment. Information was accessed through datapads, not books. Meals were eaten quickly at feeding stations. And why would anyone need to look out a window in space? There was nothing to see but stars. Commander Xyloth, who had first encountered the humans, spoke up. I have reviewed their historical records. The humans spent 3,000 years traveling in space before they developed faster-than-light technology. All of that time was spent on slower ships traveling for years or decades at a time. So, asked Sharks, the Krellian commander. So they learned to design ships for long-duration missions. They built their vessels around crew comfort and mental health. They discovered that happy crews perform better than stressed crews. Sharks laughed. That is primitive thinking. Modern crews are professionals. They do not need to be happy. They need to be efficient, Admiral Creton agreed. The Imperium has refined crew training for millennia. Our personnel are capable of operating at peak efficiency for months at a time. But Xyloth persisted. Sir, I spoke with several human crew members. They stay on their ships for years at a time. Some of them consider their vessel to be their home, not just their workplace. Home? Vorath looked confused. A ship is a tool. You do not live in a tool, the humans do. Xyloth pulled up an image of the UNSS Endeavor's interior. Look at this corridor. The walls have paintings, art created by crew members. And here, this is a personal quarters. It has pictures of family, books, plants, personal decorations. Each crew member's room is different. The council stared at the images. Imperial quarters were identical. Each room had a bed, a storage unit, and a workstation. Nothing more. Personal items were kept in the storage unit when not in use. The idea of permanently displaying personal decorations seemed strange. This is inefficient. Admiral Creton said firmly, the humans are wasting resources on unnecessary comfort. When they face a real military challenge, they will realize their mistake. Vorath ran final calculations. According to my analysis, if the humans removed all non-essential systems and redesigned their ships according to optimal specifications, they could increase their efficiency by 42%. Admiral Creton nodded. We will send them our recommendations. As a gesture of goodwill, we will share our ship design principles with them. In time, they will see the wisdom of our approach. But that night, Xyloth could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human captain he had met. She had been confident, alert, and creative in her thinking. Her crew had been energetic and enthusiastic. Every Imperial crew he knew was competent but exhausted. He accessed the human ship designs again and studied them carefully. The more he looked, the more he understood. The humans did not design ships to be efficient. They designed ships to be homes. They built communities that could travel through space. Every human ship was unique because every human crew was unique. The ship reflected the personality and culture of the people who lived in it. The decorations were not wasteful. They were reminders of why the crew was out here in the dark between stars. They were connections to home, to family, to purpose. The Imperium had optimized everything. They had created the perfect war machine. But somewhere along the way, they had forgotten that ships were not just machines. Ships were crewed by living beings with emotions, needs, and dreams. Xyloth wrote a report suggesting that the Imperium study human crew psychology before dismissing their design philosophy. He submitted it to Admiral Creton. The Admiral rejected it. Efficiency was efficiency. The Imperium had perfected starship design. There was nothing to learn from a species that put gardens and game rooms on their warships. But Xyloth suspected that the Imperium was wrong. And he feared they would discover their error too late. 1 year after first contact, the Galactic Imperium hosted the Grand Exhibition. It was the most prestigious event in known space. Every spacefaring civilization brought their finest vessel to display their technological achievements. The Imperium sent the Star of Victory, a massive dreadnought that represented 200,000 years of refined engineering. It was perfectly symmetrical, gleaming silver and identical to every other Imperial dreadnought in the fleet. That was the point. Perfection meant no variation was needed. The Krellian Empire brought the Fang of Dominance, a sleek warship that looked almost identical to the Imperial dreadnought. Different species, same optimal design. The Ventari coalition presented the perfect harmony, another symmetrical vessel that varied only slightly from the other displays. Then humanity arrived. The UNSS Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and every scanner in the exhibition locked onto it. The ship was massive, nearly as large as the Imperial dreadnought. But there the similarity ended. The hull was painted dark gray with sections of bright red. On the nose, a large image of a human woman in old-fashioned clothing smiled out at the stars. Below her, the words Death's Mistress were written in letters 10 meters tall. The armor plating was clearly from different sources. Some sections were darker than others. Some had markings from previous battles. The ship looked like it had been built from spare parts and decorated by artists. Admiral Creton watched from the command deck of the Imperial Exhibition platform. Next to him, Ambassador Thelric of Krellian laughed out loud. This is what the humans bring? That monstrosity? It looks like a cargo hauler that was attacked by a paint factory. Other ambassadors smiled. The Ventari delegation whispered among themselves. The humans had embarrassed themselves in front of the entire galaxy. The human captain, Commander Sarah Chen, docked at the platform and walked into the reception hall. She wore a crisp uniform and smiled warmly at the assembled dignitaries. "Thank you for inviting humanity to this prestigious event. We are honored to share our ship design with you." Ambassador Thelrick could not contain himself. "Commander Chen, I must ask, why did you bring such a poorly designed vessel? Surely humanity has ships that are more presentable." Commander Chen's smile did not waver. "The Indomitable is one of our finest vessels. She has served for 12 years and completed 37 deep space missions. Her crew considers her the best ship in the fleet. But the design." Thelrick gestured at the holographic display. "It is asymmetrical. The armor is mismatched, and those decorations are highly unprofessional." Chen looked at the Krellian ambassador for a long moment. "The decorations tell a story. The woman on the nose is called a pin-up girl. It is an old Earth tradition. She represents home and hope. The red armor sections are from the Battle of Titan, where the Indomitable saved a colony ship. The crew voted to keep those plates as a reminder. Every mark and scratch on that hull represents a mission completed and crew members brought home safely." The hall fell silent. Admiral Creton stepped forward. "Commander Chen, the Galactic Imperium has studied your ship designs extensively. We calculate that they are 34% less efficient than optimal specifications. We mean no disrespect, but perhaps humanity could benefit from our engineering expertise." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but I wonder if efficiency is being measured correctly. Would you be willing to conduct a test?" "A test? What kind of test?" "A simple comparison. Your best ship against mine. We run the same combat maneuvers, the same emergency drills, the same system checks. Then we compare the results." Ambassador Thelrick laughed again. "The Fang of Dominance accepts your challenge. This will be educational for the humans." The next day, both ships moved to the testing range. Observers from every major civilization watched the displays. The Krellian Fang of Dominance was a beautiful sight. Every line perfect, every system optimized. It represented 100,000 years of engineering excellence. The UNSS Indomitable looked rough and strange next to it. The test began. Both ships ran through complex maneuvers. Emergency engine starts, rapid direction changes, simulated weapon targeting, system recovery drills. The Krellian ship performed flawlessly. Every maneuver was executed with perfect precision. The crew worked like a machine. The human ship was different. The maneuvers were not quite as precise, but they were faster. 15% faster. Admiral Creton frowned at the results. "How is this possible?" "The human ship is less efficient by design." Commander Zyloth, who had been studying the data, spoke up. "Sir, look at the crew response times. The Krellian crew is operating at expected efficiency levels. The human crew is operating above expected levels." "Above expected levels. That is not possible. Crews operate at their training level. Normally, yes. But, sir, I reviewed recordings from inside the human ship. During the rest period between tests, their crew was relaxed. Some were exercising. Some were eating together in their mess hall. Some were reading in their library. They appeared to be enjoying themselves, so they were not stressed. The Krellian crew spent their rest period in their quarters, following standard recovery protocol. They rested efficiently, but they did not relax. The humans actually relaxed." Admiral Creton stared at the data. A relaxed crew performed better than an efficient crew. It made no sense, but the numbers did not lie. The final test was a simulated combat scenario. Both ships had to respond to a surprise attack while conducting repairs. The Krellian ship reacted quickly. The crew followed their training perfectly. They scored well. The human ship reacted faster. But more than that, they improvised. When one system failed, they rerouted power in a way that was not in the standard manual. It worked better than the standard approach. Commander Zyloth watched in amazement. They are thinking creatively under pressure. Our crews follow the manual. Their crews are comfortable enough to innovate. The final scores appeared on the display. The UNSS Indomitable had won every category. The exhibition hall was silent. Ambassador Thelrick stared at the results in disbelief. Commander Chen smiled politely but said nothing. Admiral Creton stood slowly. He looked at the rough, decorated, asymmetrical human ship on the display. Then he looked at his own perfect, identical, efficient fleet. For the first time in his 300 years of service, he wondered if the Imperium had made a terrible mistake. News of the exhibition results spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans, with their strange decorated ships and inefficient designs, had defeated the Krellian Empire in front of everyone. Within weeks, questions began arising in civilizations throughout known space. The first crack appeared in the Ventari coalition. A young engineer named Rylux served on the cruiser Eternal Silence. He had watched the exhibition tests and could not stop thinking about them. One night, working alone in his quarters, he made a decision. He accessed the ship modification database and submitted a request. He wanted to add a small observation lounge to the forward section. Just one room with windows and comfortable seating where crew members could look at the stars. His captain rejected the request immediately. This is inefficient. Space is allocated according to operational requirements. But Rylux was persistent. He submitted reports showing human crew performance data. He argued that crew morale directly affected operational efficiency. After 3 months, his captain reluctantly approved a small test. Rylux converted a storage room into a tiny lounge. He installed a large window and brought in 6 comfortable chairs. He told no one except his closest friends. Within a week, crew members discovered the room. They started visiting during their rest periods. They sat and watched the stars. They talked about home, about their families, about their dreams. Something strange happened. The crew's efficiency scores improved by 8%. The captain noticed. She called Rylux to her office and demanded an explanation. He showed her the data. Crew members who used the observation lounge reported feeling less stressed. Their reaction times improved. Their creativity in solving problems increased. The captain was skeptical, but could not argue with results. She allowed the lounge to remain. Word spread. Other Ventari ships began similar experiments. A frigate captain added a small garden. A destroyer commander allowed crew members to decorate their quarters. A supply vessel created a communal dining area. Each time, efficiency improved. The Galactic Imperium noticed. Admiral Creton convened another emergency meeting of his war council. This is dangerous. He pointed at reports from across the galaxy. Young officers in multiple civilizations are abandoning proven design principles. They are mimicking human inefficiency. Commander Xyloth, now promoted to Admiral Xyloth for his work with humanity, spoke carefully. Sir, perhaps we should investigate why this approach is spreading. If multiple civilizations are adopting human methods, there may be something we have missed. We have missed nothing. Creton's voice was firm. The Imperium has perfected starship design over 200,000 years. These young engineers are simply following a trend. It will pass. But it did not pass. The trend grew stronger. The Imperium Science Council launched an official investigation. They sent teams to study human ships in detail. They interviewed human crew members. They reviewed 3,000 years of human space travel history. Master Engineer Vorath led the study. He spent 6 months aboard various human vessels. When he returned, his report shocked the Council. Human ship design is not inefficient. It is optimized for a different metric than ours. We optimize for mechanical efficiency. They optimize for crew psychology. The Council members leaned forward. Vorath continued. Humans spent 3,000 years in slower-than-light travel before developing FTL drives. During that time, their ships were not just vehicles. They were homes. Entire lives were lived aboard these vessels. Children were born. People grew old. Communities formed. He pulled up images of early human generation ships. These massive vessels had gardens, schools, parks, and neighborhoods. They were flying cities. When humans developed faster-than-light travel, they did not abandon this philosophy. They simply made the ships smaller. They still built vessels where people could live, not just work. They created spaces that felt like home. Another scientist, a psychologist named Thera, added her findings. I studied crew stress levels across multiple species. Imperial crews operate at an average stress level of 73%. This is considered normal and acceptable. Human crews operate at 42% stress. The difference is their environment. Humans surrounded themselves with reminders of home. They created comfortable spaces. They built communities aboard their ships. This reduced stress and increased performance. A council member objected. But our crews are trained to handle stress. Stress is part of space travel. Thera shook her head. Yes, our crews can handle stress, but they perform better without it. The humans proved this. A crew that feels at home, that has time to relax, that sees their ship as a community rather than a workplace, that crew will outperform a stressed crew every time. Vorath's final conclusions were even more dramatic. Human ships are not just war machines. They are symbols of culture and identity. Every ship is unique because every crew is unique. The decorations, the personal spaces, the communal areas, these are not inefficiencies. They are the foundation of crew cohesion and morale. He paused and looked around the room. We in the Imperium built the perfect machine. The humans built a home that can fight. In our pursuit of mechanical perfection, we forgot about the living beings inside those machines. The Science Council's report was classified immediately. It was too dangerous. If Imperial crews learned that they were being pushed beyond healthy stress levels in the name of efficiency, morale would collapse. But the report leaked. Within weeks, every major news service in the Imperium had copies. Engineers read it. Psychologists read it. Most importantly, crew members read it. Admiral Xyloth sat in his office and watched the news reports. Across the Imperium, crews were demanding changes. They wanted observation lounges. They wanted better living quarters. They wanted to be treated as people, not as components of a machine. He thought about his own ship, cold, efficient, perfect, empty. He opened a communication channel to Commander Sarah Chen of the UNSS Indomitable. Commander Chen, this is Admiral Xyloth. I have a question. How did your species figure this out? How did you know that ships should be homes? Chen smiled on the view screen. We did not figure it out, Admiral. We just never forgot. When you spend years in the darkness between stars, you need more than a job to keep you going. You need a reason to be there. You need community. You need home. She paused. Your people forgot that somewhere along the way. You got so good at building machines that you forgot you were building them for living beings. Xyloth closed the channel and sat in silence. The Imperium had 200,000 years of technological advancement, but humanity had remembered something far more important. Ships were not just tools, they were homes, and that made all the difference. Fleet Master Gornath was the most decorated officer in the Imperial Navy. He had commanded fleets for 150 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never questioned Imperial doctrine. When younger officers began talking about human ship design philosophy, he dismissed it as foolishness. When the Science Council's report leaked, he called it propaganda. When Admiral Creton suggested studying human methods, Gornath refused. The Imperium has perfected warfare. We do not need lessons from a species that paints pictures on their warships. But the debate would not die. More and more officers were questioning traditional methods. The Fleet Command decided to settle the matter once and for all. They would arrange a training exercise. Gornath's flagship, the Imperial Fist, would face a human vessel in simulated combat. Gornath accepted immediately. He would prove that Imperial efficiency was superior to human sentimentality. The humans sent the UNSS Defiant, a heavy frigate. It was smaller than the Imperial Fist but fell into the same class for combat purposes. When Gornath saw it on his scanners, he laughed. The human ship had a section along its spine that appeared to be a greenhouse. Glass panels protected rows of growing plants. The hull art depicted Earth's ocean, complete with fish and coral. On the side in large letters it read, "Home is where the ship is. This will be easy." Gornath turned to his crew. "Prepare for standard combat protocols. We will finish this exercise in under 6 hours." The exercise rules were simple. Both ships would engage in simulated combat for 3 days. All weapons were computer simulated. All damage was calculated by neutral observers. The ships could not actually harm each other, but the computer would track who would have won in real combat. Day 1 began at dawn. Both ships launched from their starting positions. The Imperial Fist executed perfect tactical maneuvers. Gornath's crew operated like a precision machine. Every command was followed instantly. Every system performed at peak efficiency. The human ship responded differently. Their maneuvers were good but not perfect. They made small mistakes. They improvised. But they were fast. After 8 hours of combat, the computer declared the engagement a draw. Gornath was irritated but not concerned. His crew had performed flawlessly. The humans had simply gotten lucky. Both ships took a rest period. Gornath watched the human vessel on his monitors. Through the windows, he could see crew members moving around inside. They appeared to be eating together in a large room. Some were exercising. Others were tending the plants in the greenhouse. They are wasting time. Gornath shook his head. My crew is resting efficiently in their quarters. The humans are playing games. Day 2 started the same way. More combat simulations. More perfect performance from the Imperial crew. But Gornath noticed something. His crew's response times were slightly slower than yesterday. Not much, just 2 or 3%. Within normal parameters for extended operations, the human crew's response times had not changed. They were still performing at the same level as Day 1. By the end of Day 2, the human ship had a slight advantage in the overall scores. Gornath reviewed the data carefully. His crew was getting tired. The stress of maintaining perfect performance for hours on end was wearing on them. The human crew did not appear stressed at all. During rest periods, they gathered in their mess hall and ate meals together. They held what appeared to be a movie screening in a recreation room. Some crew members were reading books in a small library. Gornath sent a message to his officers. Push harder tomorrow. We need to maintain peak performance. The crew will rest more efficiently tonight. Day 3 was the final test. Both ships engaged in a massive simulated battle with multiple opponents and changing conditions. This would test crew endurance, creativity, and leadership. The Imperial Fist crew was exhausted. They had been operating at peak efficiency for 2.5 days. They were trained for this, but training could only do so much. Response times dropped to 15% below optimal. Mistakes began appearing. Small errors that would not matter in a short engagement but could be fatal in extended combat. The human crew was alert and energetic. They moved quickly and confidently. When unexpected situations appeared, they improvised solutions. When systems failed, they found creative workarounds. Their response times remained steady. By noon, it was clear that the human ship was winning. By evening, the computer declared the exercise over. The UNSS Defiant had achieved a decisive victory. Gornath sat in his command chair and stared at the final scores. It was not possible. His crew had trained for years. They were the best the Imperium had to offer. How had they lost to a ship with a garden and a library? The human captain, Commander Marcus Webb, sent a message. Good exercise, Fleet Master. Your crew fought well. We would be honored if you would join us for dinner aboard the Defiant. Gornath almost refused. But protocol required a formal conclusion to the exercise. He agreed and took a shuttle to the human ship. When he stepped aboard the Defiant, he was shocked. The corridors were wide and well lit. Art hung on the walls. Plants sat in planters at regular intervals. The ship felt alive. Commander Webb greeted him warmly. Welcome aboard, Fleet Master. Please join us in the mess hall. The mess hall was enormous. It could seat at least 150 people. Real wooden tables filled the space. The smell of cooking food came from a kitchen area. Crew members sat together, talking and laughing. Gornath was led to a table where the senior officers sat. They served him actual food, not nutrient packs. Fresh vegetables from the greenhouse. Bread baked that morning. It tasted better than anything he had eaten in years. The human officers were cheerful and relaxed. They joked with each other. They asked Gornath about his career and listened with genuine interest. Finally, Gornath asked the question that had been bothering him. How did you win? My crew is better trained. My ship is more efficient. By every standard metric, we should have defeated you. Commander Webb smiled. Your crew is excellent, Fleet Master, but they are exhausted. 3 days of peak performance burned them out. My crew is also tired, but we are not exhausted. We took real breaks. We ate good food together. We relaxed in our garden. We watched a movie. We remembered why we are out here in space. We did not just operate efficiently. We lived. Gornath looked around the mess hall. The crew was finishing their meals now. Some were cleaning up. Others were heading to the recreation areas. Everyone looked content. Happy, even. On the Imperial Fist, his crew was probably in their quarters right now. Alone. Resting efficiently. Preparing for the next assignment. Webb continued. The Imperium builds incredible machines, Fleetmaster. But you forgot something important. Ships are not just crewed by professionals. They are crewed by people. People need more than efficiency. They need community. They need comfort. They need home. Gornath stayed on the Defiant for 3 hours. Webb gave him a tour. He showed him the greenhouse where crew members grew vegetables and flowers. He showed him the library where people read and studied. He showed him the observation deck where crew members sat and watched the stars. Everything was clean but lived in. Personal touches everywhere. Photos of families. Paintings created by crew members. A bulletin board with messages and jokes. When Gornath returned to the Imperial Fist, his ship felt cold and empty. He walked through the identical corridors, past the identical quarters to his own sparse cabin. He sat down and wrote his report. The humans did not defeat us with superior technology. They defeated us by remembering what we forgot. They built a home that can fight. We built a machine that cannot rest. Recommendation: the Imperial fleet should study human methods immediately. We have been wrong for 200,000 years. He sent the report to Fleet Command and sat in his cold, efficient cabin, wondering what his ship could have been if they had built it differently. 5 years after first contact, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Imperium's shipyards, which had produced identical vessels for millennia, now created ships with variation, not complete redesigns but small changes. A viewing lounge here, a communal dining area there, personal quarters that allowed customization. The changes started slowly. After Fleetmaster Gornath's report, the Imperial High Command ordered a pilot program. 3 ships would be retrofitted with human-style crew spaces. The results would be monitored. Within 6 months, those 3 ships showed a 20% improvement in crew performance. More importantly, crew retention improved. Personnel requested transfers to the modified ships. Morale reports showed dramatic positive changes. The High Command expanded the program. More ships were modified. New vessels incorporated crew comfort features from the design stage. Engineers who had spent their entire careers optimizing for mechanical efficiency now studied psychology and community design. Master Engineer Vorath, who had initially dismissed human methods, became their biggest advocate. He designed a new class of Imperial cruiser that included gardens, recreation facilities, and spacious living quarters. He called it the Unity class. This ship is not just a weapon. It is a community. A crew that lives well will fight better and think more clearly than a crew that merely survives. Other civilizations followed. The Krellian Empire, embarrassed by their defeat at the exhibition, studied human designs intensively. The Ventari Coalition made crew comfort a priority in all new construction. Even the isolated Dranthi Collective, who had always built the most austere ships in the galaxy, began adding small amenities. The most dramatic change happened in military doctrine. For thousands of years, war colleges taught that extended combat required rotation of exhausted crews. Human philosophy proved otherwise. A comfortable crew could maintain peak performance far longer than a stressed crew. New Imperial warships included meditation rooms, exercise facilities, and even entertainment centers. Ships that once housed crews for 3-month deployments now supported year-long missions without crew degradation. But the changes went deeper than ship design. The entire culture of the Imperial fleet shifted. Officers who had been trained to see crew members as components of a machine now learned to see them as people. Leadership courses added sections on morale and community building. Admiral Xyloth, who had first encountered humanity, became the head of the new Fleet Reformation program. He traveled across the Imperium, teaching officers the lessons humanity had taught him. A ship is not a tool, it is a home. Your crew is not a machine. They are people with needs, dreams, and emotions. Take care of them, and they will perform beyond what you thought possible. The most visible change was cosmetic but significant. Ships began showing individuality. Crew members were allowed to add personal touches. Not the wild decorations of human vessels, but small variations. A sculpture here, a mural there. Names and symbols that meant something to the crew. Fleetmaster Gornath's ship, the Imperial Fist, underwent the most dramatic transformation. After his experience aboard the Defiant, Gornath personally oversaw the renovation. The mess hall was expanded. A greenhouse was added. Personal quarters were redesigned to allow customization. Most significantly, Gornath allowed the crew to vote on hull art for the ship. They chose a phoenix rising from flames. Below it, in 6 different languages representing the species serving aboard, were the words, "Never too late to change." When other fleet masters saw this, some were scandalized. But most were curious. And when the Imperial Fist's performance scores increased by 18%, criticism stopped. 5 years after first contact, humanity sent the UNSS Endeavour back to Imperial space for a formal treaty signing. The same ship that had first confused Scout Commander Xyloth now arrived as an honored guest. The ceremony was held on the Imperial homeworld. Representatives from every major civilization attended. Admiral Creton, now the eldest member of the High Command, gave the keynote speech. 5 years ago, we met a species that challenged everything we thought we knew about starship design. We dismissed them as primitive. We calculated their methods to be inefficient. We were wrong. He paused and looked at the assembled delegates. The Galactic Imperium has existed for 200,000 years. In that time, we perfected the art of building machines. But we forgot why we built those machines. We forgot who they were for. Humanity reminded us. They showed us that true efficiency is not about perfect engineering. It is about understanding the people who operate those perfect machines. A happy crew will always outperform a miserable one, no matter how good the ship is. The Imperium built machines of war. Humanity built homes that could fight. We optimized for everything except the most important factor, the well-being of our people. In our pursuit of perfection, we forgot what we were fighting for. Humanity never did. He gestured to the windows where ships from dozens of civilizations orbited the planet. Look at our fleet now. Every ship is different. Every vessel reflects the personality of its crew. We finally understand that this is not weakness. It is strength. Today we sign a treaty not just of peace but of mutual learning. The Galactic Imperium thanks humanity for teaching us what we had forgotten. You gave us back something we lost thousands of years ago. You reminded us how to build a home among the stars. The ceremony concluded with the signing. Commander Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral, signed for humanity. Admiral Creton signed for the Imperium. Representatives from 20 other civilizations added their marks. Afterward, there was a reception aboard a newly commissioned Imperial vessel. The ship was called the New Beginning. It was built from the start with human philosophy in mind. Large windows looked out at the stars. A central garden provided fresh air and a peaceful gathering space. The mess hall could seat 300 people around comfortable tables. Admiral Chen walked through the ship with Admiral Xyloth. She smiled at the changes. You have done well. This ship feels alive, Xyloth nodded. We learned from the best teachers. But I must ask, when your species first achieved spaceflight, did you consciously decide to build ships this way? Or did it happen naturally? Chen thought for a moment. It was natural. Our early ships were slow. Journeys took years or decades. We had to make them livable or people would go insane. We built communities because we had no choice. When we developed faster engines, we kept the same philosophy because it worked. We never saw our ships as just vehicles. They were always homes. Xyloth stopped at a window and looked out at the gathered fleet. Ships from the Imperium, Krellian, Ventari, Dranthi, and a dozen other civilizations floated together. Each one now showed signs of individuality. Each one had been touched by human philosophy. We built empires. You built homes. In the end, the homes were stronger. Chen joined him at the window. Not stronger, just different. You had efficiency. We had community. Now we all have both. The two admirals stood in silence watching the fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds, each one unique, each one a home to its crew. The galaxy had changed, not through conquest or war, but through a simple idea. Take care of your people and they will take you to the stars. A week later, the combined human and Imperial fleets departed on a joint exploration mission. They would travel to the edge of known space and beyond. The mission would last 3 years. As the ships jumped to faster than light speed, every crew member knew they were not just going on a military expedition. They were going home together. And in the mess halls and observation lounges and gardens of those ships, crews from different worlds sat together, shared meals, told stories, and built the communities that would carry them through the darkness between stars. The age of perfect machines had ended. The age of living ships had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Lee Dahyun stared at the radar screen in disbelief. 36 massive ships had just dropped out of hyperspace near the mining colony of New Busan. The vessels were unlike anything he had ever seen before. They were huge, dark, and covered in what looked like weapons. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Park Min-ji. She was young but smart, and Dae-hyun trusted her judgment completely. "Put it through," Dae-hyun ordered. He commanded the patrol vessel Incheon's Pride, one of 12 ships protecting the outer colonies. His small fleet was no match for whatever had just arrived. The main screen flickered to life. A tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like fire. When it spoke, the translator made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "Primitive beings of this system, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Valorian Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately. Your species will serve the Valorian Empire. Resistance is futile." Dae-hyun looked around his bridge. His crew of 23 men and women stared back at him. These were good people, miners, engineers, farmers, who had left Earth to build a better life among the stars. They had families waiting for them back on New Busan. "Admiral Kethvar," Dae-hyun said calmly. "This is Captain Lee Dae-hyun of the Terran Colonial Defense. We don't want any trouble, but we won't surrender our people. Leave now and no one gets hurt." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your 12 tiny ships against my fleet? You cannot be serious." Dr. Park Min-ji was working frantically at her station. She had been studying the alien ships since they arrived. "Captain," she whispered, "their shields are strong, but they're using old energy patterns. Our mining lasers might actually hurt them." Dae-hyun nodded slightly. The mining colony used powerful lasers to cut through asteroid rock. The colonists had mounted some of these lasers on their ships for protection against space pirates. No one had ever thought they would face an alien invasion. "Admiral Kethvar," Dae-hyun said, "you have 10 minutes to leave our system." 10 minutes? The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "I will give you 10 seconds to surrender, or I will destroy every ship and every colony in this system." Dae-hyun cut the transmission. He opened a channel to all 12 ships in his patrol fleet. "All ships, this is Incheon's Pride. We're going to fight. Protect the colony at all costs. Use everything you have." Commander Kim Woo-jin, who led the strategic operations for the colonial defense, came on the radio from the surface. "Captain, we're evacuating the civilians to the underground shelters, but we have 5,000 people here. They need time." "You'll get it," Dae-hyun promised. The Valorian fleet moved forward. Their ships were massive compared to the human vessels. Each alien cruiser was 3 times the size of Dae-hyun's ship. They came in a perfect formation, like they had done this 1,000 times before. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Dae-hyun ordered. It was a desperate plan. The human ships would split into 3 groups and attack from different directions. They would use their smaller size and speed to confuse the enemy. The first group of human ships charged straight at the center of the alien fleet. The Valorians fired their weapons. Bright blue energy beams cut through space. 2 human ships exploded immediately. But the attack was just a distraction. The second group of ships came from the left side. They had modified their mining lasers to maximum power. The beams cut into the alien shields like hot knives through butter. 3 Valorian ships took damage before they could turn to face the new threat. The third group came from behind. These ships carried the heaviest mining equipment. Instead of firing weapons, they rammed directly into the alien vessels. The first ship, commanded by Captain Song Min-ho, crashed into a Valorian cruiser's engine section. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. "What are they doing?" Admiral Kethvar screamed on his bridge. "These tactics make no sense. Why are they destroying their own ships?" But the human plan was working. The Valorians were used to fighting enemies who valued their ships and lives above everything else. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything to protect their families. Captain Lee Dae-hyun watched as more of his ships were destroyed, but they were taking Valorian ships with them. The mining lasers were cutting through alien armor. The ramming attacks were causing massive damage. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ji called out, "the colony is almost evacuated. Commander Kim says they need 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes." Dae-hyun looked at his remaining ships. Only 6 were left, including his own. The Valorians still had 28 ships. But something had changed. The alien fleet was not advancing anymore. They were staying back, afraid of more ramming attacks. All ships, pattern Gamma, Daehyun ordered. This was even more desperate. The remaining ships would use themselves as shields while the colony finished evacuating. The human ships, spread out in a line between the aliens and the planet. They fired everything they had. Mining lasers, construction tools turned into weapons, even their emergency flares. It was not much, but it was enough to keep the Valorians cautious. Admiral Kethvar watched from his command ship. He had conquered 17 different species in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans fought like they were insane. They destroyed their own ships without hesitation. They turned mining equipment into weapons. They refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "We have lost 8 ships. These humans are using weapons we do not understand. Their tactics are completely unpredictable." Kethvar stared at the human ships. They were small and weak, but they fought with a fury that frightened him. His own crew was getting nervous. Valorian warriors were brave, but they were not used to enemies who seemed to enjoy dying in battle. "Sir, the humans have stopped firing," the tactical officer said. On the planet below, Commander Kim Woo-jin's voice came over the radio. "Captain Daehyun, all civilians are safe. Underground shelters are sealed. Colony is secure." Daehyun smiled. His mission was complete. The people were safe. But he still had one more surprise for the aliens. "Admiral Kethvar," he broadcast on an open channel. "This is Captain Lee Daehyun. You wanted to see what humans can do when we're threatened. This was just the beginning. Leave now, or find out what we're really capable of." To make his point, Daehyun ordered his remaining ships to detonate their fusion reactors simultaneously. 6 small suns bloomed in space, taking out 5 more Valorian ships that were too close. Admiral Kethvar stared at the expanding fireballs where the human ships had been. These creatures had destroyed themselves just to prove a point. They had killed themselves to send a message. "Tactical retreat," he ordered quietly. "All ships withdraw to safe distance." His crew looked at him in shock. The Valorian Third Fleet was retreating from 12 primitive ships, but Kethvar knew something his crew did not understand yet. These humans were not primitive. They were something far more dangerous. From the underground shelters on New Busan, Commander Kim Woo-jin watched the alien fleet pull back. Dr. Park Min-ji had made it to the surface before the battle ended. She was analyzing the data they had collected on the Valorian ships. "Commander," she said, "I've been studying their technology. They're advanced, but they're also predictable. They fight like they're following a manual. Everything by the book." Kim Woo-jin nodded. "And we don't have a book. We make it up as we go." On his command ship, Admiral Kethvar was preparing his report to the Valorian High Command. How could he explain what had happened? How could he tell them that 12 small ships had forced his entire fleet to retreat? "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "From the humans?" Kethvar asked. "Yes, sir. It's from someone called Commander Kim Woo-jin." Kethvar hesitated, then nodded. "Put it through." Kim Woo-jin appeared on the screen. He was a young human male with serious eyes. "Admiral Kethvar, I have a message for your empire. What you fought today was one small patrol fleet protecting one small colony. We have over 200 colonies spread across 50 star systems. Each one is defended. Each one is ready to fight. Tell your empire that humanity does not surrender. Tell them we protect our own. And tell them that if they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The transmission ended. Admiral Kethvar sat in his command chair, thinking about what he had seen. The humans had fought with weapons that should not have worked. They had used tactics that made no strategic sense. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation to protect their civilians. But the most frightening thing was what the human commander had said. This was just one small colony. How many more were out there? How many more humans were ready to fight like this? Kethvar began composing his report to the High Command. He would recommend sending a full sector fleet to deal with the human threat. Maybe 2 sector fleets. These creatures were more dangerous than they appeared. In the underground shelters of New Busan, the civilians were emerging to survey the damage. The space battle had been visible from the planet's surface. They had watched their defenders sacrifice themselves to keep the colony safe. Dr. Park Minji was collecting data from the wreckage in orbit. The pieces of Valorian ships would tell them much about their enemy's technology. But she had already learned the most important thing: the aliens. War Marshal Zeftal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, 2,400 Valorian warships prepared for the largest military operation in recent galactic history. The 5th Conquest Armada represented 15% of the Empire's total military might. It was enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Marshal," his aide reported, "all fleet groups are ready. We have confirmed positions on 17 human colonies across 12 star systems." Zeftal nodded. He was a veteran of 17 successful planetary conquests. The humans would learn what it meant to defy the Valorian Empire. Admiral Kethvar's humiliating defeat would be avenged. "Begin the assault," he commanded. "Start with their 3 largest colonies, New Seoul, Neo-Tokyo, and Prometheus Station. Show no mercy." Across human space, Admiral Choi Seonho was coordinating the defense from Terra Command. The graying military veteran had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, humanity's first interstellar war. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're detecting massive Valorian fleet movements, at least 2,000 ships, possibly more. They're targeting our major population centers." Choi Seonho studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Valorian ships moving toward human colonies. The enemy had overwhelming numerical superiority. But numbers were not everything. "Send word to all colonies," he ordered. "Execute Defense Protocol 7. All civilians to prepared shelters. All militia units to battle stations. And activate the Ghost Corps." Colonel Yoon Jisoo received the activation signal while her unit was training in the asteroid fields near Prometheus Station. The Ghost Corps was humanity's most elite special forces unit. They specialized in unconventional warfare, the kind of fighting that regular armies could not handle. "All units, this is Phoenix Leader," she broadcast to her scattered teams. "The party has started, you know what to do." Yoon Jisoo's teams were different from normal soldiers. They had spent years learning to fight in space without large ships. They used small, fast vessels that could hide among asteroids and space debris. They struck without warning and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The first target was a Valorian supply convoy heading toward New Seoul. 60 transport ships protected by 20 escort vessels. It should have been safe passage through empty space. The attack came from nowhere. Small human ships appeared from behind asteroids and launched everything they had. But instead of trying to destroy the convoy, they targeted the escort ships, communication arrays, and sensor equipment. "What's happening?" the Valorian convoy commander screamed as his screens went dark. "Where are they?" The Ghost Corps ships had already vanished back into the asteroid field, but they had left presents behind. Dozens of small mines attached to the transport ships' hulls. The mines would not explode immediately. They would wait, sending location data to other human forces. At Prometheus Station, engineer Bae Hyun-soo was making final adjustments to humanity's newest defensive technology, adaptive shield systems that could learn and counter enemy weapons in real time. "Sir," his assistant called out, "the Valorian fleet is 3 hours out, 200 ships heading straight for us." Bae Hyun-soo smiled grimly. "Good. Time to see if our shields are as smart as we think they are." The Valorian assault on Prometheus Station began exactly as War Marshal Zeftal had planned. 200 heavy cruisers approached the human industrial complex in perfect formation. The station's defenses looked pathetic in comparison. A few orbital platforms and some civilian ships converted for military use. "Begin bombardment," the Valorian fleet commander ordered. "Destroy all defensive installations." The first wave of Valorian energy weapons struck the station's shields. The barriers flared bright blue and held. The second wave hit harder. The shields flickered but remained active. "Sir," the Valorian tactical officer reported, "their shields are adapting to Our weapon frequencies. Each shot is less effective than the last. Bae Hyunsu watched from the station's command center as his adaptive shields learned from each attack. The Valorian weapons used predictable energy patterns. The shields analyzed each shot and adjusted their harmonics to better resist the next one. Rotate shield frequencies every 30 seconds, he ordered. Let them think they're making progress, then surprise them. The battle for Prometheus Station lasted 18 hours. The Valorians threw everything they had at the human defenses, but the adaptive shields continued to evolve, becoming more resistant with each attack. Finally, the Valorian fleet commander made a desperate decision. All ships ramming speed will destroy the station with kinetic impact. But as the alien ships accelerated toward the station, Colonel Yoon Jisu's Ghost Corps struck again. They had been hiding in the wreckage of destroyed civilian ships, waiting for this moment. Small explosives attached to the Valorian ship's engines detonated simultaneously. 20 Valorian ships lost power and crashed into each other. The coordinated ramming attack became a chaotic collision that destroyed 60 more vessels. The surviving ships retreated in confusion. At New Seoul Colony, the battle was even more brutal. The Valorians had brought their most powerful siege weapons, expecting to crush human resistance quickly. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. Every human civilian was a potential soldier. Children as young as 12 operated anti-aircraft guns from concealed positions. Elderly citizens piloted makeshift bombers loaded with mining explosives. The entire population had turned their colony into a fortress. "Sir," a Valorian ground commander reported to his ship, "the humans won't stop fighting. We've taken the main city, but they keep attacking from underground tunnels. Even their children are armed." War Marshal Zeftal could not believe what he was hearing. Civilian populations were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. They were supposed to beg for mercy. They were not supposed to fight like professional soldiers. "Use the nerve gas," he ordered. "Clear the tunnels." But when the Valorian troops entered the underground passages, they found them empty. The humans had abandoned their positions and moved to new ones. The tunnel system was far more extensive than the aliens had realized. General Na Yoonji commanded the defense of New Seoul from a hidden command bunker 3 kilometers underground. She had spent 5 years preparing the colony for siege warfare. Every building was connected to the tunnel system. Every street had hidden weapons caches. Every civilian knew their battle station. Phase 2, she ordered. Begin urban assault. Above ground, the Valorian occupation force suddenly found themselves under attack from all directions. Human fighters emerged from sewers, building basements and concealed bunkers. They struck fast and hard, then disappeared back underground. The Valorians were experts at conventional warfare. They knew how to fight other armies in open space or on flat battlefields, but they had no experience with guerrilla tactics in urban environments. "Marshal," the ground commander reported, "we control the surface, but the humans control everything underneath. They appear, attack, and vanish. We can't predict where they'll strike next." Dr. O. Taman was coordinating the human defense from the research facility on Kepler 442b. He had developed the quantum communication network that allowed human forces to coordinate across vast distances instantly. "All units," he broadcast to human forces across 12 star systems, "begin Operation Hornet's Nest. Time to show them what we're really capable of." Across human space, the real counterattack began. The Ghost Corps had spent weeks placing tracking devices on Valorian supply ships. Now they knew the location of every enemy vessel in human territory. Small human strike teams hit Valorian ships throughout the night. They did not try to destroy the vessels. Instead, they sabotaged life support systems, navigation computers, and communication arrays. The alien ships became floating tombs, cutting off from their fleet and slowly dying in space. Colonel Yoon Ji-soo led the most daring raid personally. Her team infiltrated War Marshal Zeftal's flagship while it orbited New Seoul. They did not try to capture or kill the enemy commander. They had a different mission. They planted listening devices throughout the ship and hacked into the Valorian communication system. Now humanity could hear every enemy transmission, every order, every tactical discussion. "Marshal," Yoon Jisu's voice came over the ship's speakers. "This is Colonel Yoon Jisu of the Terran Ghost Corps. We've been listening to your conversations. We know your battle plans. We know your supply routes. We know your weaknesses. Sweet dreams." The transmission cut off, leaving the Valorian command staff staring at each other in shock. The humans had been inside their most secure vessel without being detected. War Marshal Zeftal realized that his invasion was failing. 8 months of fighting had cost him over 1,600 ships. The humans showed no sign of surrendering. If anything, they were becoming more aggressive as the war continued. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we've intercepted human communications. They're calling this the training war. They say they're using our invasion to test their military systems." Training war? Zeftal could not understand what that meant. The humans were fighting for their lives. How could they treat it as training? At Terra Command, Admiral Choi Sionho was reviewing battle reports from across human space. The defensive campaign was proceeding exactly as planned. The Valorians were being worn. Grand Admiral Morthak the Destroyer stood on the command deck of his massive dreadnought, the Galaxy's End. Around him, nearly 10,000 Valorian warships assembled in the largest military formation in the Empire's history. 3 full annihilation fleets representing 60% of Valorian military power, prepared to crush humanity once and for all. Admiral, his strategic coordinator, reported, "All fleet groups are in position. We have planet crackers, atmospheric poisoners, and star killer missiles. The humans will face complete extermination." Morthak nodded grimly. He had earned his reputation by destroying entire civilizations that refused to surrender. The humans would learn what true fear meant. War Marshal Zeftal's failure would be avenged with overwhelming force. "No prisoners," he commanded. "No enslaved populations. Total sterilization of all human worlds. We will erase this species from the galaxy." On Terra Prime, President Kang Min-seok stood in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the planet's capital city. The former military strategist knew this moment would come. The Valorians would eventually commit everything to destroying humanity. "Mr. President," General Na Yunji reported, "Valorian fleets are massing in 7 different staging areas. Intelligence estimates between 9 and 10,000 ships. They're bringing world-killer weapons." Kang Min-seok studied the tactical display showing red dots throughout human space. The enemy had enough firepower to sterilize every human world simultaneously. But humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. "Activate Protocol Omega," he ordered quietly. "All hidden facilities, all reserve forces, all secret weapons. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." Across human space, the real war machine began to awaken. What the Valorians had seen so far was just the public face of human military power. The truth was far more impressive and terrifying. Dr. Otaman coordinated the activation from his hidden facility in the Centauri system. For 3 years, humanity had been building weapons and ships in locations the Valorians could never have imagined. Underwater factories on ocean worlds, underground shipyards and asteroid mining stations, hidden construction facilities in the empty space between star systems. "All stations report ready," he announced to President Kang Min-seok. "Project Deep Storage is fully operational. We have 1,500 hidden production facilities coming online simultaneously." The Valorian assault began with Grand Admiral Morthak's favorite tactic: overwhelming shock and terror. His planet cracker missiles targeted Terra Prime, Nu, Sol, and 12 other major human worlds simultaneously. The weapons were designed to split planets apart from the core outward, but when the missiles reached their targets, something impossible happened. They simply disappeared. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported in confusion, "the planet crackers have been intercepted. Some kind of energy barrier is destroying them before impact." General Na Yunji watched from Terra Prime's command center as Bai Hyunsu's newest defensive system proved itself: planetary shield generators that could vaporize incoming missiles with focused energy beams. The technology was based on lessons learned from the adaptive shields used at Prometheus Station. "Sir," her tactical officer reported, "all major worlds are secure." The planetary shields are holding against everything they're throwing at us. But the real surprise came when the human counterattack began. Ships emerged from hidden bases throughout human space, not the converted civilian vessels the Valorians had been fighting, but purpose-built warships designed specifically for military combat. Admiral Shin Ji-won commanded the first wave of humanity's true fleet. Her ships appeared from concealed positions, in asteroid fields, nebulae, and empty space between star systems. The Valorians suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they had never seen before. "All ships," she broadcast, "begin Operation Retribution. Show them what happens when you threaten human families." The new human ships moved unlike anything the Valorians had encountered. They were fast, heavily armed, and equipped with Bai Hyunsu's adaptive technology. Their shields learned from enemy attacks within seconds. Their weapons adjusted frequency and power automatically to penetrate Valorian defenses. Marshal Yang Dong-hyuk led the Deep Space Reconnaissance Force in a series of strikes that devastated Valorian supply lines. His ships had been watching enemy movements for months, learning their patterns and weaknesses. "Target their command vessels," he ordered. "Take out their fleet coordination first." Yang Dong-hyuk's forces used tactics the Valorians could not understand. They appeared from impossible angles, struck with precision at critical systems, and vanished before the enemy could respond. It was like fighting ghosts that could predict every move. Grand Admiral Morthak watched his carefully planned assault dissolve into chaos. Human ships were appearing everywhere, using weapons and tactics his strategists had never encountered. The enemy seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "the humans have been intercepting our communications for months. They know our battle plans, our supply routes, our ship movements. They've been preparing specifically for this attack." Director Lim Soo-young of the Strategic Deception Division smiled as she watched Valorian fleets struggle against carefully laid traps. Her teams had spent 2 years feeding false information to enemy intelligence while learning everything about Valorian military doctrine. "Phase 3, she announced to her scattered operatives. "Begin the revelation protocol. Time to show them how thoroughly they've been deceived." Across the battlefield, human forces revealed the true scope of their deception. The colonies the Valorians thought they had destroyed were empty shells. The real populations had been evacuated to hidden worlds months before the invasion began. The desperate defenses the humans had mounted were carefully designed training exercises. Every battle had been planned to test specific weapons and tactics against live enemies. The Valorians had unknowingly served as test subjects for humanity's military development. President Kang Min-suk addressed the Valorian High Command directly via intercepted communication channels. His image appeared on screens throughout the VI enemy fleet, calm and confident. "Honorable members of the Valorian Empire," he said, "you have been fighting the Terra Colonial Defense Force, our local militia. They represent approximately 30% of human military capability. You are about to meet the Terran Republic Defense Forces, our actual military." The transmission cut off, leaving Grand Admiral Morthak staring at a blank screen. 30%? The humans had been holding back 70% of their forces? Admiral Park Jin-woo's reserve armada emerged from hiding like a rising tide of death. 15,000 ships of advanced design equipped with weapons the Valorians had never seen. They moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. "All units," Park Jin-woo broadcast, "begin total war protocols. No Valorian ship leaves human space." The reserve armada's ships were marvels of human engineering. They used quantum-entangled communication systems that made jamming impossible. Their weapons could adjust power and frequency faster than enemy shields could adapt. Their armor was designed to actually become stronger when damaged. General Hong Yuna commanded the ground forces that landed on Valorian ships disabled by the fleet action. But instead of slaughtering the enemy crews, she did something unprecedented in galactic warfare. "Attention Valorian personnel," she broadcast to captured ships. "We are providing medical assistance to your wounded and repair crews for your damaged vessels. Surrender peacefully and you will be treated according to the Sati, Terran Conventions on Warfare." The Valorian soldiers who surrendered found themselves in a situation none of them could understand. The humans provided food, medical care, and comfortable quarters. They asked questions about Valorian culture and technology, but they did not torture or execute prisoners. "Why are you helping us?" a wounded Valorian officer asked General Hong Yuna. "We came to destroy your species." Hong Yuna smiled sadly. "Because that's what humans do. We fight when we have to, but we don't enjoy killing. We'd rather turn enemies into friends." The battle for human space raged for 18 months, but it was not the desperate struggle the Valorians had expected. Instead, it was a systematic demonstration of human military superiority. Dr. O. Taiman's quantum communication network allowed perfect coordination between human forces across hundreds of light years. Every ship, every soldier, every defensive installation operated as part of a single massive organism. The Valorians found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to read their minds. Human forces anticipated every attack, countered every strategy, and struck at weak points the aliens did not even know they had. Grand Admiral Morthak's mighty armada was reduced to fewer than 3,200 operational ships. His planet crackers had been neutralized. His elite assault troops had been captured and were being treated better than they treated their own wounded. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander." Admiral Park Jin-woo's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. "Grand Admiral Morthak, this is Admiral Park Jin-woo of the Terran Republic Defense Forces. Your invasion has failed. Your ships are surrounded. Your crews are dying. Surrender now and we will—" Emperor Kalthavan of the Valorian Empire sat in his golden throne room, reading Grand Admiral Morthak's battle report for the third time. The words seemed impossible to believe. The Empire's greatest military force, 60% of their total fleet strength, had been defeated by a species that appeared to treat warfare as entertainment. "Counselor Vextar," he called to his chief military advisor, "explain to me how this is possible. How can creatures who have barely achieved interstellar travel defeat our greatest armada?" Counselor Vextar shifted nervously. The old warrior had served the Empire for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like the reports coming from human space. "Your Majesty, our intelligence division has been analyzing intercepted human communications. The truth is worse than we feared." The Emperor gestured for him to continue. "The forces that defeated Grand Admiral Morthak represent less than 30% of human military capability. What we fought was their colonial defense force and local militia. Their actual military has not yet engaged. In the depths of space, far from any star system, Admiral Shin Ji-won commanded the human reserve armada from her flagship, the Terra's Wrath. Around her, 15,000 ships waited in perfect formation. These vessels had been built in secret over the past 5 years, hidden in locations the Valorians could never have imagined. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we're receiving new intelligence from the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. The Valorians have discovered our deception network." Shin Ji-won smiled coldly. Marshal Yang Dong-hyuk's spy ships had been observing Valorian space for over a decade. Humanity knew the location of every major enemy world, military base, and resource facility. They had detailed maps of Valorian territory that were more accurate than what the Empire's own military possessed. "Good," she said. "Time to show them what we've really been doing all these years." Marshal Yang Dong-hyuk's reconnaissance forces had been humanity's eyes and ears throughout the galaxy. His stealth ships, invisible to Valorian sensors, had studied every aspect of the Empire's military, political, and economic structure. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported from the hidden base in the void between stars, "the Valorians have finally realized that Earth is not humanity's homeworld. They're beginning to understand the scope of our deception." Yang Dong-hyuk nodded. Director Lim Soo-young's disinformation campaign had been masterful. For 3 years, she had convinced the Valorians that Earth was humanity's primary world and main population center. In reality, Earth was just one of over 200 major human colonies, and not even among the top 10 in terms of industrial capacity. "Phase 4, he ordered. "Begin the revelation protocol. Let them see what humanity really looks like." Director Lim Soo-young sat in her command center on the hidden world of New Geneva, monitoring Valorian communications as her carefully planned deception unraveled. The enemy was finally beginning to understand how thoroughly they had been manipulated. "Sir," her communications specialist reported, "we're detecting panic transmissions throughout Valorian space. They've discovered our observation posts in their territory. They know we've been watching them for years." Lim Su-yung had spent 5 years building the most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history. Human operatives and automated spy systems monitored every aspect of Valorian society. They knew the Empire's military secrets, political weaknesses, and economic vulnerabilities. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. Emperor Kalthven received the report from his intelligence division with growing horror. Human spy ships had been operating in Valorian space for over a decade. They had observed military exercises, recorded classified communications, and mapped strategic installations. "Your Majesty," Intelligence Director Morkoth reported, "the humans have been preparing for this war since before first contact. They knew about our empire years before Admiral Kethvar encountered their patrol fleet." The Emperor stood up from his throne, pacing to the great window that showed the capital city of Valorius Prime. "Are you telling me that their first contact was staged? That they allowed Admiral Kethvar to find them?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Our analysts believe the humans wanted us to attack them. They used our invasion as a training exercise to test their military systems against a real enemy." On Terra Prime, President Kang Min-seok held an emergency session with the Terran High Council. The time for deception was over. Humanity was about to reveal its true nature to the galaxy. "Counselors," he addressed the assembled leaders of human space. "The Valorians now know they have been fighting less than 1/3 of our military forces. It's time to show them what humanity looks like when we're actually trying." Fleet Admiral Park Jin-woo received his new orders via quantum encrypted transmission. The reserve armada would emerge from hiding and demonstrate why humanity had become the dominant species in their region of the galaxy. "All ships," he broadcast to his massive fleet. "Operation Final Lesson begins now. Show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human civilians." But as the reserve armada prepared to reveal itself, something even more shocking was happening throughout human space. Civilian news broadcasts were discussing the war with casual interest, as if it were a sporting event rather than a fight for survival. Valorian intelligence operatives intercepted human media transmissions with growing disbelief. News anchors discussed battle tactics like game strategies. Civilian commentators critiqued military performance as if watching entertainment. Children played games based on the battles they had witnessed. "Breaking news," a human reporter announced. "The Valorian Empire has committed 60% of their total fleet strength to the invasion of human space. Military analysts expect this phase of the conflict to last approximately 6 more months, before Valorian forces are forced to retreat." The reporter spoke as if the outcome was already decided. There was no fear, no uncertainty, just confident analysis of how the war would proceed. Emperor Kalthven watched these transmissions in his private chamber, struggling to understand what he was seeing. How could a species under existential threat discuss their situation so calmly? "Counselor Vextar," he called his military advisor, "explain to me why the humans are not afraid." The old warrior's response chilled the Emperor to his core. "Your Majesty, our psychologists believe the humans are not afraid because they never considered this a real threat. To them, our invasion is an interesting challenge, not a fight for survival." In the hidden research facilities of New Cambridge, Dr. O. Taman was coordinating humanity's true scientific achievements. The technology the Valorians had encountered was just the beginning. Human science had advanced far beyond what they had revealed. "Sir," his research assistant reported, "the quantum fold communication network is ready for galaxy-wide activation. We can now coordinate military operations across thousands of light years in real time." Otaman nodded. Humanity's technological advantages went far beyond better weapons and shields. They had developed communication and coordination systems that allowed their entire species to function as a single organism when necessary. But the most disturbing revelation came from intercepted human educational broadcasts. Children in schools, were learning about the war as part of their history lessons, even though it was still ongoing. Today we'll study the Valorian conflict, a human teacher explained to her class of 10-year-olds. This represents humanity's first major interstellar war and demonstrates several key principles of asymmetric warfare and psychological operations. The children listened attentively, taking notes on military tactics and strategic deception. To them, the war was already history, a teaching tool to help them understand how their species dealt with external threats. General Hong Yuna was processing Valorian prisoners of war when she made a discovery that changed everything. The captured, enemy soldiers were not the fanatical warriors she had expected. They were frightened, confused beings who had been told they were fighting primitive savages. "Colonel," she reported to her superior, "the Valorian military structure is based on rigid hierarchy and unquestioning obedience. Their soldiers have never faced an enemy that thinks independently. They literally don't know how to fight against opponents who adapt and improvise." This explained why human tactics had been so effective. The Valorians were excellent at following battle plans, but they could not adjust when those plans failed. Humans, on the other hand, had built their entire military doctrine around flexibility and adaptation. Ambassador No Seung-min received his instructions from President Kang Min-seok as Valorian resistance began to collapse throughout their empire. His mission was to negotiate not just an end to the war, but the foundation of a new galactic order. "Ambassador," the president said, "the Valorians are about to learn that humanity has been in contact with 47 other spacefaring species. All of them have been too afraid of the Valorian Empire to reveal themselves. With the Empire neutralized, it's time to build something better." As the truth spread throughout Valorian space, panic began to set in. Not just military panic, but existential terror at the realization of what they had awakened. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were something entirely new in galactic history, a species that treated warfare as problem-solving, diplomacy as President Kang Min-seok stood before the assembled representatives of 63 different species in the Great Hall of Terra Nova Station. The massive space facility had been built in just 6 months, a testament to humanity's industrial capabilities. Today would mark the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. "Fellow citizens of the galaxy," he began, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building a better future for all sentient life." Fleet Admiral Park Jin-woo watched from the military section as former enemies sat side by side with species that had hidden from the Valorian Empire for centuries. The Kalari, who had spent 50 years hiding in the galactic rim. The Genthi collective, whose peaceful merchant fleets had been driven underground by Valorian aggression. The mysterious Vorthan, whose advanced technology had been kept secret for fear of Valorian theft. "Admiral," his aide whispered, "the integration of former Valorian military units is proceeding ahead of schedule. General Hong Yuna reports that 3,000 enemy officers have volunteered for joint training programs." Park Jin-woo nodded. General Hong Yuna's occupation forces had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of ruling through fear and oppression, they had improved conditions for Valorian civilians while retaining former enemy military personnel as partners rather than prisoners. Emperor Kalthvin, now bearing the ceremonial title of Cultural Advisor for Valorian Integration, sat in the front row of the assembly. 6 months ago, he had commanded the largest empire in known space. Today, he watched his former subjects working alongside their former enemies to build something better than either had imagined possible. "Your Majesty," Ambassador No Seung-min said quietly, taking the seat beside him, "the reconstruction of Valorius Prime is ahead of schedule. Human engineering teams have restored full infrastructure, and your people report higher satisfaction ratings than they had under the old system." Kalthvin still struggled to understand how this was possible. Humanity had defeated his empire completely, yet instead of enslaving or destroying his people, they had made their lives better. Valorian workers now had shorter hours, better pay, and access to medical care that surpassed anything the empire had provided. "Ambassador," he said, "why? Why help those who tried to destroy you?" No Seung-min smiled. Because that's what humans do. We solve problems. Your people were suffering under an oppressive system that forced them to attack others. We fixed the system. In the research facilities of New Geneva, Dr. O. Taman was coordinating the most ambitious project in galactic history. The Galactic Communication Network would connect every inhabited world in real time, allowing instant coordination and cooperation across thousands of light years. Sir, his assistant reported, the Vorthen have agreed to share their quantum-fold technology. Combined with our communication systems, we'll be able to link the entire galaxy within 2 years. O. Taman marveled at how quickly everything was changing. 6 months ago, most galactic species had lived in isolation, afraid to reveal themselves. Now they were working together on projects that would benefit everyone. But the most remarkable changes were happening on individual worlds throughout former Valorian space. General Hong Yuna toured the rebuilt capital city of Valorius Prime, accompanied by her Valorian counterpart, General Kethmore. The former enemy commander had become one of humanity's most effective partners in the reconstruction effort. General Hong, Kethmore said, as they watched human and Valorian children playing together in a newly constructed park. My people are calling this the peaceful conquest. They joke that humans invaded us with kindness instead of weapons. Hong Yuna laughed. We prefer to think of it as aggressive friendship, much more effective than traditional warfare. The park they walked through had been built where the old imperial palace once stood. Instead of a monument to conquest, it was now a place where families from dozens of species could gather and play. Human engineering had created environmental zones suitable for different atmospheric requirements, allowing unprecedented interspecies interaction. General, Kethmore continued, I must ask you something that troubles many of my people. Why do you trust us? How do you know we won't betray you when we become strong enough? Hong Yuna stopped walking and looked at the former enemy officer seriously. General, humanity learned something important during our own history. The best way to prevent future conflicts is to make sure everyone benefits from peace. If your people are happy, prosperous, and free, why would they want to fight us? Marshal Yang Donghyuk's Deep Space Reconnaissance Force had been reassigned to exploration rather than military intelligence. His ships, which had once spied on enemy fleets, now searched for new species to invite into the growing galactic community. Sir, his navigation officer reported, we've detected artificial structures in the Kepler 891 system. Appears to be a civilization that's achieved early spaceflight but hasn't left their home system yet. Yang Donghyuk smiled. First contact. Protocols had changed dramatically since the Valorian conflict. Instead of waiting for new species to find them, humanity actively sought out developing civilizations to offer assistance and protection. Prepare the standard first contact package, he ordered. Medical technology, communication systems, and a formal invitation to join the galactic community. And make sure they understand we're here to help, not conquer. But the most significant changes were happening in human space itself. The war had revealed humanity's true capabilities, but it had also shown the galaxy what human society was really like. Director Lim Soo-young of the Strategic Deception Division found herself reassigned to the Department of Cultural Exchange. Her skills at understanding and manipulating other species were now used to help facilitate peaceful cooperation rather than military advantage. Ma'am, her assistant reported, the Kalari delegation is requesting assistance with their educational system. They want to implement human-style critical thinking programs for their children. Lim Soo-young nodded. This was the kind of challenge she enjoyed. How do you teach an entire species to think differently? How do you help them develop the flexibility and adaptability that had made humanity so successful? The answer, she had learned, was patience and genuine respect for other cultures. Humans didn't try to make other species become human. They helped them become better versions of themselves. Engineer Bae Hyun-soo's adaptive technology had revolutionized more than just military defense. The same principles that allowed shields to learn from enemy attacks were now being used to create systems that adapted to the needs of different species. Sir, his research team reported, the atmospheric processors for New Genthy are working perfectly. The colony can now support 7 different species simultaneously, each with optimal environmental conditions. Bai Hyunsu watched the progress reports with satisfaction. Building weapons had been necessary during the war, but building homes for refugees and creating environments where different species could live together was far more rewarding. Colonel Yoon Jisu's Ghost Corps had also been transformed. Instead of conducting sabotage and reconnaissance against enemies, they now served as rapid response teams for humanitarian crises throughout the galaxy. "Colonel," her communications specialist reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. Natural disaster on Kepler 1247. 7 different species need evacuation." Yoon Jisu's teams had become the galaxy's premier emergency response force. They could appear anywhere within hours, equipped to handle any crisis. The same skills that had made them terrifying to enemies now made them heroes to civilians in need. President Kang Min-seok concluded his address to the Galactic Assembly with words that would be remembered for centuries. "We stand at the beginning of a new age," he said. "An age where strength is measured not by the ability to destroy but by the capacity to build, where success is defined not by conquest but by cooperation, where the greatest warriors are those who fight to protect the innocent and help the weak become strong. Humanity offers you our hand in friendship, not as rulers, but as partners, not as conquerors, but as builders. Together we will create a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential, where every world can prosper, and where every child can grow up without fear." The assembly erupted in applause from dozens of different species. But the most meaningful moment came when Emperor Calthavan stood and added his voice to the ovation. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. The Valorian Empire had become the Valorian Federation, a democratic society where former subjects now chose their own leaders. 47 species that had hidden in fear for decades now participated openly in galactic commerce and culture. The Treaty of Terra Nova established humanity as the protectors of galactic peace, but with strict limitations on their authority. They could intervene to prevent aggression or genocide, but they could not impose their will on peaceful societies. Ambassador No Seung-min had negotiated a framework that satisfied everyone. Humanity would provide military protection and technological assistance, but each species would govern itself according to its own values and traditions. The final scene of this new galactic order took place in a small park on Valorius Prime. Emperor Calth